Hello and welcome back to my channel, Skepticism. This is your boy, Adam of NOLA. And this series you're watching is called GotAnswers, where we delve into all of the apologist crap that we see in GotQuestions.org. So today's question from .question.org I like because it really exposes some real BS of the Christian Bible and the Hebrew Bible. But it's also a pretty simple one to dive through. So I'm going to read this question and I'm going to read their full answer before I even bother to respond to it. Okay? So this is, I'm not going to read all the references to the Bible verses that they give. You guys can go read the story yourselves if you like. But the question is, what was the source of Samson's strength? Here is GotQuestions' answer. In Judges 13, verse 5, an angel gives a promise and command to Manoah's wife. You will become pregnant and have a son whose head is never to be touched by a razor because the boy is to be a Nazirite. Quick side note on that. They don't explain Nazirites here, but Nazirites are essentially like a different class of people that have been dedicated to God, the Hebrew God. They're not supposed to cut their hair amongst other things. They're like a religious elite. But you will become pregnant and have a son whose head is never to be touched by a razor because the boy is to be a Nazirite, dedicated to God from the womb. He will take the lead in delivering Israel from the hands of the Philistines. Her son was Samson. As an adult, Samson's strength allowed him to tear apart a lion with his bare hands and to defeat many Philistines with supernatural acts of strength. The Philistines, of course, saw Samson as their mortal enemy. In an attempt to defeat him, some of the Philistine leaders plotted with a woman named Delilah, to discover the source of his strength. They said to her, See if you can lure him into showing you the secret of his great strength and how we can overpower him so we may tie him up and subdue him. Each one of us will give you 1,100 shekels of silver. Delilah tried 3 times to pry from Samson the secret of his strength. 3 times she failed, as Samson misled her with various stories. Then we read, with such nagging she prodded him day after day until he was sick to death of it. So he told her everything. No razor has ever been used on my head, he said, because I have been a Nazirite dedicated to God from my mother's womb. If my head were shaved, my strength would leave me and I would become as weak as any other man. Verse 19 records Samson's defeat. After putting him to sleep on her lap, she called for someone to shave off the 7 braids of his hair and so began to subdue him, and his strength left him. The Philistines, who had been waiting to pounce, bound Samson, gouged out his eyes, and put him in prison where he was forced to work at a mill. After a time, the Philistines chose to bring Samson out of prison to make sport of him. He was brought into the arena during a festival where about 3,000 men and women were in attendance. Samson rested against the pillars and prayed for God to give him strength one more time to defeat the Philistines. God answered his prayer. Verse 30 notes, Then he pushed with all his might, and down came the temple on the rulers and all the people in it. Thus he killed many more when he died than while he lived. Remember, the original question was, what was the source of Samson's strength? It seems as though Samson's hair was his human source of power, but it is clear from this final event that God was the true, ultimate source of his strength. Samson's uncut hair was simply the sign that he was obeying God's command for him to be a Nazirite. God's strength was the power behind each of the judges, including Samson. That's the end of the answer. And I understand the answer. What I think is funny to me is that they don't seem to understand that this makes God look pitiful. Really pitiful. So, yes, the angel told his mother never to let his hair be cut, right? The angel never told his mother and never let him tell anyone what the source of this is. Now, I know you can say, well, it's just, if you know this is the source of your strength, you probably shouldn't be telling everyone where this strength comes from. It's not wise. Okay, he's human. All right. The angel knew he was going to be human. God knew he was going to be human. Everyone knew that this woman was going to give birth to a human. He's human. It's inevitable that eventually in his life he was going to tell somebody, whether that person was a hot woman with, that he wanted to get in that vagina or whatever. It doesn't matter. Someone was going to find out. And it's not like he didn't break any of God's commandments by telling someone that this was the source of his power. While it may have been unwise, it was no betrayal of God whatsoever to tell Delilah that this is the source of my power. Okay? And clearly we see he resisted. It's not like he just said, oh yeah, here's the answer right there. No, he resisted, and finally he got tired of it. And of course they give it in a very misogynistic way, like, oh, she nagged and nagged, and he just got so tired of it, which just plays into so many tropes. But at no point in this does Samson do anything that you could construe as betraying God on any level. God was the one through the angel that came down and said, hey, this is what's going to happen. Your kid's going to be a Nazirite, and he won't cut his hair, which, by the way, all the Nazirites don't cut their hair. So I don't know why it is that Samson was the one whose strength was tied to his hair, because there are other Nazirites. Samson is not the only Nazirite. As I said at the beginning of this video, Nazirites were like a religious order, okay? And just like Sikhs, they don't cut their hair, and they view religious purpose in that. And that's fine, but the idea is not that they all get superhuman strength because they haven't cut their hair. That's not a thing. So it's not like he's the only one with this. I mean, all Nazirites don't cut their hair, at least during the time that they're a Nazirite. And Samson was a Nazirite, as the angel told him he would be. And he was given this superhuman strength, which I'm not even sure how Samson would have known from the story that his strength came from his hair, because again, there are other Nazirites, and the other Nazirites apparently weren't as strong as him. I mean, if every Nazirite had superhuman strength, people would start to go like, oh, I guess if I grow my hair out, I can have superhuman strength. But clearly he was the only one, but somehow he knew that this is where my strength comes from. He did resist telling Delilah, but did eventually give in to her horrible nagging. And those damn women always nagging us. And then as a result of that, he was captured, bound. He had his eyes gouged out. Ew. Was basically turned into this work slave, made to work a mill. I get this picture of like if you guys have ever seen the old movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger of Conan the Barbarian, in the beginning of it, he's moving, pushing this mill, this big, super strong dude. He's pushing it around. I guess that's what Samson was doing. And then at the end of all this, he gets trotted out, and they don't have the full text of it here. I believe the implication is that they let down their guard and let him grow his hair back, actually. But in this synopsis that they give on Got Questions, it just says he prayed to God for the strength, and then he pushed on the pillars and killed more Philistines. Thus he killed many more when he died than while he lived. But ultimately, this is a really sad story. It's a sad story for Samson, and it makes God look like a pitiful little dick. Because if this was truly, according to this story, the source of Samson's power wasn't his hair, it was God, which even as an atheist, that saying the source of your strength is God versus your hair makes more sense to me to say it's God than your hair, because I see plenty of people every day with long hair who don't have superhuman strength. But if we are to believe then that the source of this power was truly God, which it's the Bible, so yeah, everything's God, then why is it that God cut off his power because Samson was betrayed? It's not Samson's fault that he was betrayed. And yet, God was so committed to this trope of magical realism that, oh, when you cut off your hair, you're going to lose your power. He was so invested in that magical realism trope that even when his boy Samson got betrayed, God wasn't going to step in and do anything about it. God let him get his eyes gouged out and let him get confined to this misery of working a mill while he's in blindness. God didn't have anything to say about it. The only time God really gave a crap is, I guess, is apparently when Samson was pulled up for them to make fun of him, and then Samson prays one more time, let me get my strength one more time. So God does it, and Samson tears the place down and kills a bunch of Philistines, and Samson dies. Yay, God? I mean, what lesson are we supposed to take about that says anything good about God? It doesn't. But we hold this up. I mean, this is one of the stories, like the stories you tell kids, like the story of Samson and Delilah. And I can even remember this illustration in one of my children's books. So, him with his eyes gouged out, he's pushing the pillars, he's like, oh, and everything's falling down. And at the time, when you're a little kid, you just read this, you're like, oh, that evil Delilah. But now I just read it and I'm thinking, what an asshole of a God. Like, if the power really did come from God, and again, in the context of this story, I believe that. If the power really did come from God, then why did he have to be such a dick about making sure he removed all of his power the minute he was betrayed and his hair was cut without his knowledge? But we see this time and again. The Christian God, the Hebrew God, he's really pitiful. He will let people suffer according to stupid little rules. And this is what he does. And it's really sad. And I think it's funny that on places like GotQuestions.org, they put this answer here. And they're probably thinking this is a great story about God. They probably love it. But I think it's disgusting. Thank you for joining us once again on God Answers, where we are going through all of the sad and ridiculous stories and answers that they give us on GotQuestions.org. We'll be doing more in the series. If you haven't checked it out, please check out my series, God-Free Bible Study, where we are reading these stories verbatim and we're exposing them for all of their effery. But thank you for joining us. I hope to see you again on God Answers or on God-Free Bible Study or anything else on my channel. I appreciate you being with us. Thank you.